The show that you're about to listen to was recorded back on August 1st of 1996. My guest that evening was Robert Morningsky, who wound up doing a two-part series on the Star Elders, this particular show being the first of those two parts. And now, without any further ado, is show number 296 with Robert Morningsky and his most famous talk about the Star Elders.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Rod, and I want to thank you and your network again for providing me with the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with your listeners. I have to thank several of you. I have been very, very fortunate to have Ivy West as a friend, and she introduced me to the network a while back, and I want to thank those of you who listened to her and called in and encouraged us, but thank you, Rod, and the network, and to you, Ivy, my sister in Hawaii. Thank you very much. And let me begin just this evening by giving you just a little bit of background about myself. It is truly not important within the scope of the material that we want to talk about. However, some people are wondering, who is Robert Morningsky? I am by profession a Native American dancer. I am a full-blood Native American, Hopi and Apache. Hopi on my mother's side, Apache on my father's side. I have had the extreme good fortune to be able to tour the United States. I've done several theme parks, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Old Tucson. I've done commercials, documentaries. I've done some stunt work. I have my own professional dance troupe. We went to Hawaii. We've been in New Zealand and down in Mexico and again all over the United States. So by profession, I am a dancer. I, however, would like to speak to you tonight about some information, some research that really has no bearing who I am. I am, and I like to be very honest, I like the title, I am nobody. I am nobody special in this field. I do not have a degree in physics, though I do have a degree in mathematics. I am not a research specialist and a scientist with NASA. I am not an ex-Air Force Intelligence, ex-CIA. I am not an ex-agent of any sort. I do not have the credentials that would list me as a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a doctor of any sort. I'm not a guru, not a psychic. I'm not a channeler. I am not a medium. I am trying, ladies and gentlemen, to simply present to you that I am nobody. I'm an average man who tried to make an honest living, who tried to live up to the ideals that we were taught both in school and through our parents and through our own disciplines, our own ways as we grew up. And I became very frustrated. I have a position that I would like to express in the next two nights that simply sums everything up in this fashion. Up is down, black is white, and everything we have ever been taught is a lie. It is my suggestion in the research that we're going to present to you in the next two nights that we have been deliberately lied to, we have been manipulated, we have been cheated. We have been asked to believe in a divinity, in angels, in heavenly beings, but we are told that extraterrestrial beings, beings who reside in the stars, cannot exist. We are asked to believe many miraculous and religious stories about flaming chariots, about angels that fly about in the clouds and stars that dance. But we are not permitted to believe in extraterrestrials with spaceships and starships. We have been taught in our public school systems not to think, not to challenge, but in fact to accept. We are taught to memorize. We are taught to repeat, to learn and regurgitate. I suggest that it is very plain when in fact you rose your hand in school. You asked the teacher that very deadly question, why? And her response was very simple: don't get smart. And I suggest that that tells you quite a bit. This evening and tomorrow night, I want you to challenge everything that I present to you. You must not accept one single word. Challenge all of it. Read and research for yourself. If you're confident in your faith, if you're confident in your religion or your political stance, I can only suggest to you that it is extraordinarily wise to listen to what the enemy, to listen to what the critics are saying. For if in fact your faith, your way of life, your discipline, or your political position is strong, nothing that a challenger can say will shake your faith or your position. If, however, a statement that is made makes you think perhaps your faith is not as strong, perhaps your position is not as powerful as you once thought. But again, please accept nothing that I tell you, none of the research. I will give you sources during the course of the next 2 nights. Please read everything. As soon as you are convinced you know the truth about any of several different topics, read another book. Because one of the things that we are going to point out is that the truth changes. What was true 100 years ago is no longer true. What is true today will not be true 100 years from now. It is the foolish person who relies on just one book. Later on, we're going to show you that there are numerous books that put the Bible in jeopardy as to its position as a report of truth. You must read, you must be aware, you must challenge, and you must question. I wish to apologize in advance if I offend anyone. It is not my place, it is not my desire to attack your faith or to criticize. However, I honestly believe that the research and the position that we will present to you shows that we have had the truth deliberately, maliciously taken away from us. We do not have free will. Our destinies are not decided by our own families and by ourselves. They are decided by forces outside of us. I would like to begin with the reason that I am even here. As a Native American, I grew up with the stories of the Southwest. I was fortunate to be able to spend time with my grandfather the first 5 years of my life. Shortly after my real father was born, he was killed in an accident. My grandfather raised me. He was a full-blooded Apache. And as circumstances would have it, shortly after the accident, my mother left the reservation. She left me in the care of my 2 grandfathers, my Hopi grandfather on her side, my Apache grandfather on my dad's side. I spent half of the time on the Hopi reservation, half of the time on the Apache reservation. Now, the Apache world is very, very aggressive. It is male-oriented. I'm sure many of you know the stories about Apache warriors and how they were able to truly, in some cases, destroy, if not completely bring to a standstill, cavalry forces, soldiers that outnumbered them 20 and 30 to 1. The Apache are extraordinarily passionate in their fighting, in their lives, in their dancing. Apaches are male-oriented. Now, the Hopi society is quite the contrary, female-oriented. In the Hopi world, the village, the family, the universe itself revolves around the woman. The Hopi way is one of the few on this planet that suggests that the creator of heaven and earth, and please listen very carefully, the creator of heaven and earth, I did not say the universe, the creator of heaven and earth is a woman. We believe that our ancestry is drawn through the female. In the old days, it was the woman who did the courting. It was the woman who made the decisions. It was the man who spent his life dedicating his every effort to provide her with an opportunity to fulfill the most astonishing goal that there could be for mankind, and that is to be a woman. A female-oriented society tends to be passive. tends to look towards the spiritual in the sense of the mental and the emotional. The Apache world, which is very male-oriented, tends to lean towards the physical, to the more aggressive. And so I'm sure that you can imagine growing up as a youngster, when you live for 6 months in one world which tends to the female and the passive, and suddenly you're taken to a reservation where it leans towards the male and the aggressive, it can be very eye-opening. It can be disturbing at times. However, I consider myself to be probably the most fortunate man on the face of the earth, because I was able to live in a culture, in a society which is not dying, but which has passion, both the male and the female orientation, which has passion for the dancing, which has passion for life itself. And I grew up with both extremes. My two grandfathers, curiously enough, were storytellers. This is a position that essentially some people would refer to as shaman, medicine man, teacher. There are many, many titles for it. But essentially the storyteller is the one who interprets revelations. He interprets the prophecies. It is he who does the teaching. Both of my grandfathers spent great amounts of time showing me the secrets of the warrior, the discipline of the warrior, and the secrets of the stars. But my story begins with my Apache grandfather and the secrets of the stars. But my story begins with my Apache grandfather. Many people are aware that in 1947, in the summer, depending upon the reports, there is a purported crash of a disc near Roswell, New Mexico. It's become a very famous incident now. A lot of people think that it was a fake, it was a hoax, and other people are convinced. At this point, I do not seek to argue, save to say that more happened on that summer than research and UFO writers have written about. It is astonishing to me personally that if a UFO researcher really wants to know the truth about crashes, about incidents that occur out in the field, in the forest, or in the desert, it's interesting to me that they do not pursue the people who live in the desert, who live in the forest, who live out in the wilderness. In Australia, I would suggest they should go to the Aborigine. In Mexico, they should go to the Mexican Indians. And in the United States, wouldn't it be a smart thing to do to go to the Native Americans who live out in the desert, who live in the forest, who'd rather spend a night under the stars than to spend the night covered with a roof? Well, it seems that this one tiny little detail, this one little thought, has eluded most UFO researchers. Because had they gone to the reservations, had they gone to the outback of New Mexico, they would have been able to find a far different story. The rumors in the Southwest about the summer of 1947 are plentiful. They do not speak about just one crash near Roswell. In fact, they speak of 3 crashes. The first crash occurred in early June near Socorro. When this last year, a film was released about an alien autopsy, the European marketers began to sell it under a Roswell name. It is my opinion that they did so in order to be able to market the video. As soon as I heard about this alien autopsy film, I was handed some stills from the internet of the alien on the autopsy table. I refused to watch that film when it was first aired on national television, as did many other Native Americans, because several of those of us who were able to see these stills beforehand recognized the figure. I am sure that none of you would want to watch one of your loved ones, one of your family, or an elder in your family on an autopsy table being taken apart. Many Native Americans are aware that that figure on that table was not one of the beings taken from the Roswell crash. That being came from the Socorro crash fully 1 month earlier. Having seen the stills, I immediately sent a fax to a gentleman in Germany suggesting to him that they had made an error, a heinous error. That this was not a Roswell crash, this was a Socorro crash. Interestingly enough, they immediately called back wanting to know how we knew. We knew because the rumors in the Southwest spoke often about the Socorro crash. And so I am suggesting not only was there a crash in Roswell in July, there was a crash in June in Socorro, and there was also a crash in August near the Four Corners area of that very, very same summer. And it is this third crash that begins my story and reveals how I got tied into research on UFOs, on the hidden history of planet Earth. In the summer of 1947, 6 Native American men from differing tribes, all of them friends, having grown up together, had decided to go out into the desert near the Four Corners area to go on a vision quest. Now, a vision quest is a very, very personal endeavor. It is an attempt to learn something about self. On occasion, it is to get a glimpse into the future, to see what one's path may lead them to. At times, it is about finding out a difficulty or a problem that exists within the soul, exists within the spirit. In this case, these 6 young men were camping out in the desert, preparing themselves for a several days vision quest. In the late evening, while gathered around the campfire, they suddenly looked up, and there was a streak that came across the sky. But it was very low, very close. Now, I should advise you that in the Southwest, dancing stars is part of the mythology, part of the cosmology of every youngster's life. We grow up with stories about dancing stars. We grow up with stories about star beings and star people who have descended from the heavens to teach us. We have stories about Kachinas, about Yebiches. We have numerous stories. Probably half of the cosmology of most Native American tribes in the West addresses the idea of star beings who have descended to Earth to teach us to be good human beings, to teach us to be warriors, to teach us the wrong way and the right way. And so these 6 men, looking up into the sky, see a streak flash over their heads. However, instead of continuing on and disappearing over the horizon, it simply disappeared over the hill, and with a loud, thunderous boom, the sky lit up, there were sparks, and a glow remained in the air. They looked at each other, and with the foolishness of young men, they decided to run over the hillside to see if they could find the fallen star. The rumors about falling stars have existed for a long time on the reservation. Many people will whisper to one another, if you see a falling star come to Earth, stay away. Do not go, for the soldiers appear very quickly. And if you are there, oftentimes you do not come back. And so these 6 men, ignoring the rumors, believing that the crash of this star was part of their vision quest, they proceeded in the middle of the night to go headlong into the forest and to try to find the glowing star. Well, they did. After just a few miles in the darkness, they came over a hill, and there below them in a wash was the disk. Still glowing, heated red hot, the creosote was smoldering, some of the trees were scorched, and there were 2 enormous pieces lying in the wash. 2 of the men were designated the lookouts. They would remain on the hill to see if they could see the soldiers arriving in the distance. The other 4 decided to go down and to look through the debris, to look through the wreckage. This is not what they had expected. They were expecting some sort of a star, but in fact, it was a ship. It wasn't an airplane, but it was a ship. As the 4 began to scurry through the wreckage, it didn't take long before the 2 lookouts screamed to them, "Baud lohe, baud lohe." They're coming. The soldiers are coming. The 4 young men who were down in the wash immediately began to gather up what they could, little souvenirs, and as they started to leave, one of them, named Midnight, noticed something. There were tiny little feet sticking out from under the wreckage. The metal was red hot, but he was able to push it up with his shoulder as one of his friends, Lindo, reached in and pulled the little figure out. As the others came up to see what had happened, they noticed that there were other bodies just to the right of them in the distance. The two lookouts came scurrying down the hill, yelling at them, "It's time to go, vámonos, vámonos." The six of them stood there momentarily looking at this tiny little figure. And without hesitation, they decided to take this star being, the survivor of the ship, of the crash, and take him to their Vision Quest camp. By tradition, a Vision Quest camp is kept hidden. It is a secret even to families, so that they will not be interrupted in any way when they pursue their quest. As the soldiers were coming around the hill, two of the young men took the being and headed directly for camp. The other four are designated conejos, the rabbits. It is their task to be the decoys, to distract the soldiers and to take them away from the direction of the camp and to keep them from the star being that they had rescued. It succeeded. The soldiers were misled, and all six were able to get away. Hours later, the six gathered together in the Vision Quest camp. There, they looked down, and there was a star being at their feet. Now, I know that this might sound odd. I know that this might sound strange. But it's a true story. Native Americans believe star beings exist, not because they have great faith, not because they believe the storytellers, but because, in fact, they have experiences. They have actual contact. I will suggest to you that if any legitimate researcher is able to take the time to work his way into the company of one of the elders, of one of las viejitas, one of the elder women who lives in the outback, and if he were to take the time to develop a friendship, she would begin to share stories with him about her own experiences. Many of the elder women to this day tell stories about how as young children, as little girls, they played with some of these beings. There are some beings that you play with and some that you leave alone. There's a wonderful story of Viejita just recently told us. A researcher who had wanted to find out something about the story, something about this old woman, went to speak to her after several months of ingratiating himself. And he asked her, "Well, which ones are you afraid of?" And she said, "Oh, the lizard ones. Stay away from the lizard ones." And he asked her, "Are you not afraid? Aren't you scared to be out here all alone in the outback?" And she says, "Oh, no. If you just ignore them, they go away." He said, "How do you ignore them?" And she said, very simply, "You just don't feed them." Just a few weeks ago, there was tremendous uproar on one of the reservations in the Four Corners area. Several elder women stormed into one of the council headquarters, and there they demanded from their elders and their councilmen that they do something. Because early that morning, apparently one of the dancing stars had descended and had landed outside their ranch. And the star beings from the dancing star emerged, and they told these elder women, "You must talk to the elders. You must talk to the councilmen. You must tell them that it is almost time for the return." And these 6 elder women crashed their way into the council headquarters, demanding that the stories be told, demanding that the knowledge of the star beings be shared not with just other Native Americans, not with those that we call human beings, that's what Native Americans call themselves, but also with all the peoples of this world. In early June, there was a star gathering, a conference of elders, of speakers from all over the United States who gathered in Yankton, South Dakota. I am very honored and very pleased to have been named as one of the speakers. However, circumstances prevented me from attending. The reason for that we will talk about tomorrow. But I'm going to suggest to you now that all over the world, the primitive peoples, the savages of this planet, are preparing to release the wisdom of the star people, that which they have known for hundreds of years. I can only suggest to the civilized world that perhaps it is time to listen to the primitives, listen to the savages. I find it remarkable to hear numerous New Age disciplines, numerous new followings, suggesting that we need to return to Mother Earth. We need to go back and take care of our planet, to take care of our animals, to take care of our environment. What seems to elude these people is that in order to go back to Mother Earth, in order to return to nature and to become one with that which we are part of, it is necessary to become a primitive. It is necessary to become a savage. We're going to have to give up the hair dryers. We're going to have to give up the Nintendo, unless you have a battery. We're going to need to give up all of those luxuries of the civilized world. I have had the good fortune, I've had numerous opportunities to work with individuals and to take them on vision quests. And I am going to tell you now that a vision quest in this day and age begins in the civilized world with civilized people in this fashion. The first task that you have is to unlearn everything you have been taught, to release the baggage, to let go of all which you have ever believed in, to wipe the mind clean, to be open, and to be receptive. Before this upcoming break, I want to give you a very quick example of how we are taught in our public schools not to think, but in fact to accept. Many of you, if you are asked what the opposite of tall is, will automatically respond short. That's what we're taught in school. But I want to show you a fallacy in the thinking. By definition, opposite has two essential meanings. Opposite, number one, means opposing direction. If you have something that moves to the left, the opposite moves to the right. If you have something that moves up, the opposite moves down. Opposite implies direction. The second essential definition of opposite is balance. Two equal quantities equidistant from a center point. If you have one object that weighs 1 pound and is 1 meter away from the center point.
Please note from now until...
And on the other side, you have another object that is 1 pound and 1 meter away from the center point. They are in balance. They are therefore opposite. Those are the two definitions of opposite. Look them up in the dictionary. I want you to take a look at the floor. Take a look at the tabletop. Now, imagine that as point zero and lift your hand up just ever so slightly. That is the definition of short. Return to the floor, return to the table, and now raise the hand extraordinarily high. That's tall. But please notice what you have just done. You have raised your hand in the same direction both times. Short and tall are just varying quantities of the same concept. They move in the same direction, up. And therefore, by definition number one, since there is no opposing direction, tall and short cannot be opposite. The second definition suggests that they are two equal quantities equidistant from a center point. It is obvious tall and short cannot be equal under any circumstances. Therefore, the opposite of tall is not short. The reason we respond in that fashion is that is what we are taught. That is what we accept, and we have never challenged it. Let me expose you to some primitive and savage thinking. I am going to suggest to you that the opposite of tall is not short, but that in fact it would have to descend below the table or below the floor. The opposite of tall is deep. The opposite of short is shallow. Please do not accept it. Challenge it. Question it. Look at it. And then I defy you to go to the smartest person you know and ask them what the opposite of tall is. They're going to automatically respond short. It is not because they have thought about it. It is not because they have deliberated for any length of time. It is because they are taught to repeat and to regurgitate. The primitive way of life, the vision quest, returning to Mother Earth, suggests that you need to challenge everything. The opposite of light is not dark. Time permitting, we'll pursue that tomorrow, but think about it this evening. What would the opposite of light be? Is it dark? Is the opposite of picking up a book not picking it up? Or is it putting it down? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We need to rethink everything. Accept nothing, challenge everything. And please, do not accept what I am telling you blindly. Question it. The star being who was rescued by the 6 young men was alive and unconscious. Over a course of time, the 6 men were able to nurse him back to health. They referred to the star being as the Star Elder, out of respect for the fact of his origin in the heavens and the quite obvious fact that he was very intelligent and extraordinarily wise if he was able to dance in the stars. The Star Elder recuperated after a few months, and then, to their astonishment, he began to communicate. I have to give these 6 men a great deal of credit, for instead of running to their elders, instead of going to their tribes, instead of going to the newspapers, the state troopers, and gathering glory and fame for themselves, the 6 young men came to an incredible decision. It was their thought that if anyone should decide the fate of the star being, it should be the star being himself. And so the 6 young men vowed to simply keep him hidden until he was ready to decide for himself what was going to happen with his life. And so the Star Elder, regaining his health, began the story that would change the lives of these 6 young men and that would change mine. I am extraordinarily proud to say that one of the 6 rescuers of the Star Elder was my grandfather. My Apache grandfather's name was Darany, and I'm very proud of this man and his friends for what they did. There are days, however, when I curse him for exposing me to the stories of the Star Elder. Because there have been numerous times I have tried to walk away from this, numerous times I have tried to leave this, but I cannot. One will understand later. The Star Elder, a being from the stars, in a campground with the primitives and savages of planet Earth. What more paradoxical sight or scene can you imagine? 6 primitives in their war paint, in their loincloths, in their moccasins, sitting at the knee of a star being who had descended from the heavens. This Star Elder, after a few months, produced a small, flat, green crystal. He cupped the crystal in his hand, and in the crystal he was able to create images. And in these images were the stories of where he was from, of who he was, and why he was here on planet Earth. If that was not an astonishing thing in itself to these 6 young men, there was more to come. For in time, in the crystal, the hidden history of planet Earth was revealed to these men, as only an extraterrestrial could tell it. The Star Elder revealed the development of the solar system, the birth of planet Earth, and even the creation of mankind. And he told it not as if it was a research project, but as if he had learned it in school. The stories of the Star Elder passed on through my grandfather, passed on to his grandchildren, and to myself, were the inspiration for the research that I am about to present you. They do not clash in any way with our histories, but the documented histories They do clash, however, with what we are told in the public schools, what we are told on CNN, what we are told in the documentaries. Our histories have been fabricated to serve one purpose, to suit the institutions, to serve the system. I do not wish in any way to denigrate or to attack the system. It has produced many wonderful things for individuals. Healthcare, medicine, and other events that have made it astounding to live in this time. However, there is a price. We have sacrificed our freedom, we have sacrificed our destiny, we have sacrificed our free will. The Star Elder's story spoke of several star beings who descended to Earth, and they affected our history. I grew up with these stories and was absolutely enthralled. I could not get enough. Now, I have to mention that the Hopi stories and the Apache stories oftentimes talk about star beings. They talk about the star warrior, Sahu, who descended from the stars to teach the Apache warriors how to fight, to be able to stand against 10 or 20 men. The stories about Hilili, who was a witch in the beginning, an evil spirit who descended from the stars, and who plagued the Native Americans of the Southwest until such time as the conquistadores, the priests, and the foreigners began to invade the lands. Hilili, the star being, the star Kachina, then turned his powers against the missionaries, against the Spanish soldiers. Hilili, who was once he was a burr in the saddle and a thorn in the side of the Native Americans, suddenly had become a hero. There is a story about Nangasahu, the blue star Kachina, the chasing star Kachina, who descends from the sky and who has this very mysterious message. He speaks of prophecy. He tells us what's going to happen at the end of the fourth world. I will reserve that story for tomorrow, but Nangasahu is a mysterious figure. He has a long trailing headdress and a very mysterious black star on his face. Very few elders know his story, and those who do know seldom talk about what he does and his purposes. Star beings are part of the cosmology of virtually every Native American tribe, of every primitive society on this planet. We find it remarkable that the civilized world does not allow for the existence of star beings and dancing stars. We find it absolutely astonishing. The arrogance to suggest that we are the only ones in the universe speaks loudly of the foolishness and the arrogance of civilization. I grew up with the stories of the elder and never once questioned. I had no doubts. I had seen the dancing stars myself. In fact, on Wednesday nights, on special Wednesday nights, we were taken out into the desert to sit on the hillsides, and there we would watch the dancing stars. They would twirl and spin and dance, and when I first saw them, I said, "Grandfather, what is that?" And he said, "Grandson, those are the spirit dancers. Those are the star dancers." And I said, "My God, Grandfather, how can I be a star dancer? How can I dance in the skies, in the heavens with them?" And he said, "Grandson, you must learn the dance. You must have the spirit, and you must have the heart." And I was very fortunate because he taught me some of the steps, and I have been able to spend a great number of days in powwows. I have competed, I have danced, I have been in ceremonies, and I cannot tell you how important a part of life dancing is. It is a way in which to express oneself. We believe that the signature of a man, the signature of a woman, is what he does with his body. It is what he does with his spirit. It is not what you do with a pen and pencil. It is how you express your physicalness. The chapter, the book that you write, is done with your body, not with the intent and not with a pen. And I have had the good fortune to become a spirit dancer. I have been able to attend powwows. I have danced for days on end. When the powwows were over, I had the good fortune to be able to go and dance at conventions and perform for various groups. Dancing is passion, dancing is fire. In fact, I named my dance troupe Maksho, which means to dance with fire. When I entered college, I entered a new environment, a world in which you are taught to question and challenge everything. We are told from the first days in the philosophy courses, the humanities courses, even in the English courses, Set aside that which you bring with you, open your mind, and be receptive. When I entered the college system, I was immediately challenged. How do you know that the stories of the star beings are true? How do you know that the Star Elder really existed? Could it be that your grandfather was simply giving you a myth or a legend, some sort of a moral play in which to deliver a message? It was possible. It was disconcerting. I was worried that perhaps they were not true. But I had to find out for myself, and I am sure most of you have gone through the same problem, the same situation. What is life about? What am I doing here? How do I know that the Bible is true? How do I know that the Hindu way, the Taoist way, the Christian way, you name the faith, how do you know? Perhaps it's a joke. And why is it? I want to believe. I just want to believe so badly, Father. I want to believe so badly, Mother, but there's just something wrong. It's not fulfilling. There's just a tiny little piece missing. Well, I never had that problem until I got to college, but I had to take the advice of the professors. I had to find out for myself, what is the truth? Were the star beings false? Were the biblical angels false? Were the gods of Egypt false? What was the truth? I enrolled in a religious studies program, the first one of its kind at the university here in the Southwest, and I was able to spend 3 years looking into ancient documents. And what I found most astounding was that every time I thought I had found the right religion the right way, I found that there was an earlier religion, another way of life that had said the very same thing. I found myself being forced to study ancient languages, to look at the Hebrew Aramaic languages, to look at the hieroglyphs, to look at the cuneiforms, to continue to delve deeper and deeper into the past. I actually pursued a study in the world's oldest religion. I was persuaded that there was at least one common source. The names of the gods, the stories, the events that were in all of the religions of the planet were far too similar. Not only were there common threads, there were ropes that were the size of a tugboat hawser. They were enormous coincidences and similarities. The word for God in Apache is the same as the word in New Zealand that the Maoris use. Some of the words used in Australia were the same as the words used in ancient Egypt and Sumeria. Some of the Hopi words that are used are the same as the Celtic and the Babylonian. It was astounding. And I found that, in fact, there was one religion way, way back. But our cultural experts, our archaeological scholars, our biblical, I'm going to have to use the word experts, suggest that our civilization began in approximately 4000 BC. I'm sure most of you have seen the books, you've seen the videos, you've heard the numerous lecturers who are now presenting evidence to show that the Sphinx is not created in the year 2000, that it was very likely created somewhere around 10,000 BC. I highly recommend a book called Forbidden Archaeology. It is an extraordinarily large book, and in it there is evidence of civilization, of human beings, of footprints, of beads, of all kinds of jewelry, of hammers in rock strata that are over 1.2 million years old. There is evidence everywhere, and I suggest there is even evidence on other planets in our solar system to suggest that when the experts of our society suggest that life began 4000 BC, that they're horribly and erroneously wrong. I suggest Mr. Bauval, Graham Hancock, Richard Hoagland, Zacharias Sitchin. The authors continue. There are numerous who present evidence. Mr. von Daniken, who probably began the wave of challenging and questioning the experts many, many years ago. The evidence is astounding. I find it remarkable that you can look in any encyclopedia and you can find a definition for something called ball lightning. It is a fact. It exists. It is real. But did you know that there are hundreds of thousands of photos and videos of documented witnesses who have seen UFOs, and yet they are not accepted as true. The numbers of photos and evidence for UFOs outweighs nearly 100,000 to 1, if not more, the photos of ball lightning. The elders of the primitive societies, the savages of this planet, take a look at the civilized world and marvel at how quickly it shuts the door, how quickly it puts on the blinders, and how quickly they say, oh no, we know what is true, how could you possibly? These are people who have doomed civilization and their own grandchildren. It is time to take a look at the myths and the legends and the primitive societies of this planet, because, ladies and gentlemen, the prophecies of the ancients are coming true. Later on this evening, I would like to talk to you about the crop circles, about the comet Hale-Bopp, the comet Hyakutake, and several things that are occurring that have put the savage and primitive world on hold. We believe it is about time for the return of the gods, whether one calls them the star beings, or you call them extraterrestrials, or you call them the divinities. The prophecies are coming true across the planet. I am not a bringer of doom and destruction. I do not suggest that there will be the end of the world and nothing will exist afterwards. I do, however, suggest that there is going to be a change. The end time of some of the things that we know them, as we know them, is about due. I do not advocate the violent overthrow of a government, of a church, of a bank. I would suggest that what we need to do in the next few years is to become aware. If you can only read one book a week, I suggest you double that. If you have time to listen to lecturers, do so, please. We need to learn everything there is. I have been very fortunate to bring my family together in the last month. I suffered a disagreement with an automobile. We argued, and the car won. I had a torn ligament in my right thigh, cracked thumb, and some cracked ribs, and I directly attribute this to some of the research that we have just recently done. My family is here with me. I am going to ask you, because I know we're coming up on a break here, I'm going to ask you, if you would, please call your friends. Call anyone and everyone who you think might be interested in listening to what we are talking about. If you can tomorrow, please give my family a call. We have 4 books that we would like to offer. One is on prophecy. One is called the Star Warrior Papers. It is about the crash, the rescue of the star being, and the 6 men who rescued him. There is a 3rd book, which I have entitled Terra 1 and Terra 2, The Hidden History of Planet Earth. And in a very few pages, we try to outline the history of planet Earth as was revealed by the star being. We will touch lightly on it over the next 2 nights. But the most critical paper for us at this time is one that is known as the Second Coming Conspiracy. I will talk about it at some length tomorrow. But I am going to suggest to you now that in the next few years, there is a deliberate plot, a conspiracy to create a second coming. A Messiah, the offspring of the divinity, is going to make his appearance. And I think we better take a look at what is happening. I want to again thank Rod and the American Freedom Radio Network. If you could please give us a call tomorrow, let us know, let Rod know if this is the kind of programming, if this is the kind of material that you would like to listen to. My family can be reached at area code 602-404-8050. Again, that's Morning Sky, area code 602-404-8050. We will be happy to send you some information on the books that we are working on. A couple of the trips that we are planning, we would like to take people out and to show them some of the crash sites, some of the prophecy sites, some of the places where star beings actually resided and where the myths and the legends of the Southwest began. Please let the American Freedom Radio Network know how you feel about the program. I would also like to ask you to please call Mr. Rumlin. Let him know, as he needs to know if this is the kind of programming that you want to listen to. If you're frustrated, if you would like to know a little bit more, and I guarantee you that it's going to be radical, wait till you hear this next hour, please at least listen with an open mind. The information that we present to you took us 30 years. We have had 8 researchers working on and off during the course of the 30 years. We have information from Australia, New Zealand, from the Māori, the Aborigine, the Hawaiians, the Dogon in Africa, the Zulu tribe, and even some medicine down in Peru. Up is down, black is white, and everything you have ever been taught is a lie. We have been deceived, we have been manipulated, we have been cheated out of our destinies. In the next few years, it is mandatory that we take control of our lives, number one, and then in time, our planet. Again, I do not advocate rebellion or the overthrow of our institutions. I am simply suggesting we need to take control. We cannot permit the lies to continue. If we do not do this for ourselves, I believe we need to do this for our children. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I want to let her know that I did everything I could to make a difference on this planet. I suggest that if they are going to have any sort of a chance, that we need to learn everything we can. Do not accept anything I say, challenge it all, question it. Read for yourself. I suggest Robert Bauval, The Orion Mystery, Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods, Zachariah Sitchin, The Earth Chronicles. I would suggest Richard Hoagland. My apologies to the gentleman. I'm an admirer of his work, and his name left my mind. He has phenomenal work on the face on Mars. There is one book which is difficult to get, but I highly recommend it for its very revealing information. The gentleman's name is Patrick Tierney. It is called The Highest Altar. If you've ever wondered what human sacrifices were about, if you've ever wondered why civilizations like the Mayan, the Aztec, and even in Egypt, why they pursued human sacrifice, please pick up.
Tonight's show number is 296. Today's date is August 1st, 1996. Robert will be talking for the next 2 hours, and he'll also be talking for 3 hours tomorrow night. So make sure that tomorrow night you make your popcorn before 10 o'clock and have yourself all ready to sit down around the radio so that you can get the last part of the lecture tomorrow night.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you, to Rod and the network. Thank you very, very much. If you can, again, I know that there have been several people that had called us and were wondering when the program would be aired. Please give your friends and neighbors a call. Let them know. This is something that I think is extremely important. As I had mentioned at the tail end of the last hour, I entered university in the 60s and was very happy with the way I had been brought up. I was an Apache warrior. I was a spirit dancer. I competed in powwows. And I was very happy with the warrior discipline. Challenged in college, I began to question, enrolled in religious studies programs, and began to examine not only Native American ways of life, but also other cultures and other societies. In time, our research, and I include some brothers who were with me in college, our research took us to a very, very odd conclusion. We found that there was one common source. There seemed to be one religion which gave birth to the other religions on our planet. After 3 years, I submitted a paper to a college professor. And I was very, very happy. 3 years of research had produced several pages of work, highly documented, and I thought, in what better forum than a university can we present something that was thought-provoking and which challenged the mainstream concept of religion? I was completely surprised to find only days later that the professor called me to his office and he had labeled across the top of my works the words blasphemous and sacrilege. He was extremely upset and threatened to dismiss me from the program, were it not for the interference of another professor who stood in on my behalf and suggested that perhaps my conclusions, though upsetting, still fit the criteria for the paper. I was spared. However, I was extraordinarily disillusioned. I felt that the university was the best place in which we could pursue openness and challenge the mainstream. I was wrong. Finding no recourse, I then approached UFO organizations. I approached, and at that time they were not known as New Age, but I approached the Love and Light centers. I approached science fiction writers. I sent documents. I sent manuscripts. And I asked them all to please take a look at what we had discovered, hoping that someone somewhere would be open-minded and would expose our work to others. There was a gentleman who was a science fiction author, and he wrote back simply, "It is wonderful stuff. It is the stuff of myth and legend. It is not worthy of serious examination." An organization in southern Arizona, very prominent in its time, suggested that it was also wonderful stories, the stuff of myth and legend, and not worthy of serious examination. In short, I spent nearly a year attempting to tell the story, to present the documentation of the hidden history of planet Earth. I was rebuffed. I was rejected. In fact, I was treated as some sort of a scourge. It was as if I had presented the most blasphemous and sacrilegious thing one could imagine. I was very upset. I vowed at that time with my brothers that we would continue the story. We would share it with the primitives, with the savages. I was able to travel the country. I went down to New Zealand and Australia. I worked with the Aborigines and the Maoris down there. I worked with Mexican Indians and African Zulu shamans who came to the United States. And it was interesting because the primitive world was very open to the concept that we had been deluded, that we had been deceived, because they too had grown up with the same concepts. Perhaps it is because the primitives of this world have suffered at the hands of the civilized people. The Aborigines in Australia, the Aborigines in Tasmania, the Native Americans in North America have almost been decimated by the civilized worlds who know what the truth is and who simply dismiss and destroy anyone who
And the name of my new show is called The Last Outpost, and will soon be airing live programming, so keep checking back for announcements as such sometime over the coming weeks. Also, don't forget to call Water Oz at 800-547-2294 and let them know what you think of the reruns. And make sure you order a bottle or two of the many fine mineral water products they carry. If you mention that you heard this ad on The Last Outpost, you will be given a 5% discount at the time of your order. And now, back to the show.
I was never again going to talk to anyone other than a primitive about the star knowledge until my grandfather became ill. And as he was passing away, as he was dying, he made me promise that I would spend one full year again telling the story, telling everyone what we had discovered in our research, what we knew. I simply and honestly did not want to do it. But he elicited a promise, and in February of 1995, I began my 1 year. My grandfather has since passed away. The year, February 1 of 95 to February 1 of 96, has come and gone. I attended numerous lectures and workshops. I gave several appearances. I have delivered 48 workshops and or appearances in 52 weeks. My family and I have traveled the countryside and done nearly 20,000 miles in the year. I was prepared and was expecting to find everyone rejecting the work, writing me off as a raving lunatic. And I will tell you something interesting that occurred in the year that I was on the road. I did every UFO lecture circuit appearance I could. I did expos. I did private appearances. and I have to tell you that I was very disillusioned. It appears, and this is my opinion only, it appears that the UFO community in general is more concerned with its image, more concerned with how it looks and making a dollar than it is in getting the truth. There are a handful of men who I truly believe are trying to find the truth out. But they are being slowed down, they are being hampered by organizations that are disreputable at best. I have found myself oftentimes listed as a keynote speaker at a conference or an appearance which I have never been called for. I have written promoters and have told them I simply would not attend, and they continue to keep our name on the billing. Ladies and gentlemen, please be very careful, because it appears that the UFO community church, and this is an analogy of my own making, is more concerned with its image, more concerned with producing messiahs and gurus and saviors than it is with pursuing the truth. In the primitive societies of this planet, if an individual stands before you and declares himself the anointed one, the messiah, the savior, the guru, the primitives know to walk away from him. For he who really knows, he who is a true teacher, will never declare himself as the one. I am extremely dismayed that there are numerous individuals on the circuit today who declare themselves as the one. It is extraordinarily disheartening to those of us who are trying to tell the truth. My 1 year has come and gone, and the story that I have tried to present, I am going to try to sum up for you very quickly in the next 2 hours. We have in our research discovered that planet Earth is not in the hands of man's institutions. It is not the governments, the churches. It is not the banks. It is not the secret societies. It is not the power players behind the scenes who control the events and the destinies of the people on this planet. My answer as to who truly is in charge begins with not only my own research, but the works of, again, Mr. Sitchin, Bauval, Mr. Hancock, and numerous others. I am sure that most of you are familiar with works that suggest that extraterrestrials have influenced our lives in the past. There are far too many references to UFOs, to dancing lights, to heavenly beings for these stories to be false. Can a primitive man have had the imagination and the technology to create the pyramids and the Sphinx? We know that even with our technology today, we cannot build the pyramids in Egypt, the gates in Mexico, Tiwanaku, Machu Picchu. We cannot replicate that very simple stone structure that these primitives are supposed to have done. Why? I am suggesting, along with numerous other authors, that extraterrestrials have interfered with man's evolution. Not only have they guided us as divinities, they have punished us, tormented us as the demons and the devils of our history. I am going to suggest to each one of you that, by definition, an angel is an extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial means that it is not of earth. Angels are properly in heaven. By the very same definition, God is an extraterrestrial. Now, whether one chooses to use the word divinity or extraterrestrial, I will leave it to you. But in all the holy books, in all the religious reports and studies, in all of the hieroglyphs and the cuneiforms, the legends of star beings, of divinities, of extraterrestrials who have descended to earth, and who have not only tampered with our evolution, but who are in all actuality responsible for the experiment that is known as man. We have taken the research, the documents, the cuneiforms, the hieroglyphs, the myths, and the legends, and what we have come up is going to astound you. There are 2 star systems in our galaxy that appear to have influenced mankind's evolution and the development of our solar system for billions of years. The first and the most important, because it is the largest and the most powerful star system, is a system that in ancient documents is referred to as Orion. Today we know it as Orion. The Orion star system has a civilization that appears to be billions and billions of years old. Through the research, we have begun to piece together what the beings of the star system Orion must be like. It is possible in the research that we have made wrong estimates, that we have made wrong judgments. But it appears that the Orion star system is populated with a reptilian-type being. It appears that in the early stages, the Orion star system developed much as mankind did. There was a spark, there was a flash, life evolved from a one-cell being to a two-cell to a multi-cell being. The difference between the evolution in the star system Orion and the solar system we call Earth is that instead of an ape in the evolutionary formula, the Orion star system uses a reptile. Take a tiny little velociraptor, the same tiny little dinosaur lizard that was the villain in the Jurassic Park movie. And if you plug this little figure into the evolutionary formula, you will end up with a humanoid that is reptilian. And it is this reptilian humanoid, in general, that populated the star system Orion. Originally, it was a male-oriented society. But in time, the queens, the females, came to power in Orion. And as cold-blooded and as ruthless as the warrior kings of Orion were, it appears that the queens were much more calculating, much more devious, and much more deadly.